Welcome back to Face the Nation. We go now to Little Rock, Arkansas, and Republican Congressman French Hill. Good morning to you, sir.
Good morning, Margaret. Merry Christmas.
And Merry Christmas as well to you. This was quite the journey to get you back home and to get lawmakers to wrap up business this past week. No Democrat voted against this measure to keep the government open, but 34 Republicans did. Doesn't this show that Republicans really struggle to govern when they pass things along party lines? I mean, won't they need to work with Democrats in this new Congress?
Well, I think it's very, very important that Speaker Johnson and incoming Majority Leader Thune have a steady plan together to work with the incoming Trump administration to prioritize the president's priorities, our priorities in the House and Senate, make sure we're on the same page, because with narrow majorities, we've got to work together, and that's critical, and I think this last week demonstrated that.
Well, you will have a fractured conference, a slim majority. Mark Short, who was the Director of Legislative Affairs in the first Trump administration, said this chaos shows just how hard it will be to tackle border and tax policies in 2025. What's the reality check on the timing of that and actually delivering on what Trump campaigned on?
Well, I think Speaker Johnson and again, Majority Leader Thune working with President Trump want to use the budget reconciliation process. That's still being discussed as to exactly what that procedure will be. But I believe actually that Republicans on both sides of the Hill are united that we want to unleash American energy for future production and an all-of-the-above energy strategy. We want to secure the border. We want to fight inflation through supply-side regulatory reforms. We want to roll back those regulations that are constraining the markets and constraining private business having access to capital. So I think we're on the same page, and I think budget reconciliation will be a way to start that process and also rein in unsustainable $2 trillion deficits.
Right, but you can do a party line vote in the Senate there with the Republicans, but can you really get 218 Republicans to vote in the same direction when it was such a struggle just with keeping the lights on?
I think we can. I think we demonstrated that last year in the last Congress when we put together the most comprehensive Republican-only voting for border security, for an all-the-above energy strategy. Those are two priorities that President Trump campaigned on. We are united on those strategies, and I think we can get those priorities across the House floor, as well as I say, rolling back unneeded regulatory burden on the American economy and small businesses to help fight inflation.
Well, one of the things that was stripped out of that initial bipartisan deal that Speaker Johnson had put together was a restriction on U.S. investments in China. It would have affirmed presidential authority to impose sanctions on advanced technologies. Your Democrat colleague, Rosa DeLauro, insinuated publicly that Elon Musk came out against this because his real motivation was his extensive business ties to China. Do you share her concerns, and will this get passed?
Well, look, President Biden had an executive order governing outbound investment. We've had a debate in Congress between the House and Senate on the best way to do that. We all want to limit American investment in dangerous, I would say, dual-use technologies that can be turned around and hurt America's national security. But striking that balance has been difficult. But I don't believe that was at the heart of the 1,500-page problem. I think a majority of members clearly wanted a simple, straightforward continuing resolution and not what was turned into a large omnibus spending bill on top of a CR. So I think Speaker Johnson did a good job coming back around from that, focusing on disaster assistance to the hurricane hurt states in the Southeast, farm assistance for those farmers, and having a clean CR with an agreement with President Trump, with Majority Leader Thune on how we would tackle reconciliation to cut spending next Congress.
You are going to be the incoming chair of the House Financial Services Committee in the new Congress. It's one of 17 committees. Patrick McHenry, the outgoing chair of House Financial Services, was asked whether it matters that the Republican Party chose only male leaders. Take a listen.
For us to have no women chairs of committees is a huge mistake, and really an unfortunate thing, because we have powerful, smart, capable, tenacious Republican women that are capable of leading big committees and doing major things.
Why didn't the Republican Party select any female leaders?
Well, that's a decision made by our steering committee, but I'm delighted in the House Financial Services Committee that we have strong, very passionate, successful Republican women like Ann Wagner of Missouri, Young Kim of California, Monica De La Cruz of Texas, and we're very excited to have Lisa McClain from Michigan, our conference chairwoman, and also Maria Salazar from South Florida joining our committee. They will be active leaders in financial services policymaking.
Quickly, I know you've been trying to restrict Captagon, this amphetamine drug that the Assad regime was selling to prop up the dictatorship. Our teams in Syria filmed factories full of this stuff. What's going to happen now?
Well, first, we need the United States to be very active, work with partners to support a free and democratic Syria. Secondly, we need to document the war crimes committed by the Assad regime as it relates to all the people murdered, killed, imprisoned, tortured from the regime, and also track down the networks that were producing Captagon. We will have support from the Kingdom in Jordan, Saudi Arabia, the Gulf states to do that, but it needs to be stopped. But I'm proud of the work we did to interdict Captagon and cut off the funding, because I think it absolutely contributed to the end of the Assad regime, and that's something to celebrate.
Well, we will be tracking what happens with that. Before I let you go, I do want to ask you as well, a source familiar with the investigation tells CBS News that tomorrow, the House Ethics Committee's work investigating former Congressman Matt Gaetz' alleged sexual misconduct and drug use will be released. Last month on this program, you said it's up to that committee, but we don't want to set a precedent where we, under any circumstances, will release documents from that committee. Do you still object?
That's not, well, I don't know that that's how I would characterize what I said. I said it's up to that committee. I think they have released documents before, but I think that's something they should do with a great deal of caution, because you open up a Pandora's box of a lot of other investigations over many, many years conducted by that committee. But if they've thought it through, reviewed the material, and made that decision, that's their decision.
Okay. Congressman French Hill, thank you, and have a Merry Christmas. We'll be right back. Late last week, we spoke with retiring West Virginia Senator Joe Manchin, known for playing a pivotal, sometimes frustrating role with Democrats in many of their legislative achievements. The full interview is on our YouTube channel and website. For the broadcast, we looked to next year, when Republicans are fully in charge of Washington. So when you were speaking to us on Face the Nation last January, you said, "I love my country too much to vote for Donald Trump. I think it would be very detrimental to my country." He's the president-elect. Do you think he is detrimental to America?
January 6th was a bridge too far for me, and I think everyone knows that. I was one of the few Democrats that went over and worked with him, and we always got along great. We were very friendly. We just had disagreements on some things, but you can do that. When the people speak and they make their choice and the election's over, you better pray everything you have that the president will be successful. This is about our country, and I want him to succeed, and I have said this to him. I'll do whatever I can to help in any way humanly possible.
But you've talked about the need to return to bipartisanship and regular order. Donald Trump is promising to destroy regular order, upend the system.
I have.
How do you reconcile that?
I have total confidence and faith in my Republican Senate colleagues that are institutionalists that will not let that happen. They have the chance. They have the power. And I think there's enough Republican senators and Democrat senators too that are not going to let the filibuster blow apart. They're not going to let basically run amok of the reconciliation process just to do anything they want to. It takes 4 Republican senators, just 4. And I guarantee you, I think there's a lot more than 4.
Who are going to hold the line?
That'll protect the institution. They've been here long enough. What goes around comes around. And in 2 years, this thing could flip. 2026, you never know. It's the power of the people.
In the first 100 days of the Trump administration, leader John Thune has said he plans a once-in-a-generation investment in border security, but he's going to try to do it without Democratic votes, using that reconciliation process you just talked about. So with 51 votes, not the 60. You're saying right now that this is not how the system's supposed to work.
It's not supposed to be on
and
policy.
yet that is what the Republican leader is saying he's going to do right out of the gate.
Hold on, Margaret. If he's going to have to show the financial connotation and the cost it's costing and how it's harming our country, if it's harming it and the financial burden that we're carrying because of all the illegals coming, and he can tie that to it, then he'll have a pathway for it.
And then step 2 is tax reform.
Tax
That's the
reform
plan.
definitely falls in it.
Also through reconciliation.
Yeah. Well, here, I followed Chuck Schumer and Joe Biden starting out in their 117th Congress with the ARP. I begged the president,
The American Rescue Plan.
American Rescue Plan, not to go in reconciliation. That's basically when you've given up that you can't work with the other side. They come out of the box that way. So this is the plan that the Republicans are following now, that the Democrats basically showed them the pathway.
But is it a strategic mistake?
Oh, I think it is.
But the Inflation Reduction Act, the IRA, you played a big role in crafting. That was party line. That was through reconciliation.
That's how the vote came down. We wrote that bill in my committee, and I guarantee you, I had over 5 years of input for Republicans. But because of reconciliation, they don't cross over and vote. That's just the way it was.
And you feel good about that?
Well, I feel horrible about that we had to do it in reconciliation. I felt horrible about that. But I can tell you, the United States of America has benefited from that. We didn't fall into a recession. We brought down inflation from 9 to 3%. We brought down gas prices from $5 to $3. We did all of that. But the supply chains were so broken because of the pandemic. The prices of everyday staple of life, food, things of that sort made us almost unbearable for people for the burden they were carrying. The IRA kept the United States economy in better shape than any place else in the world during the pandemic. That's a fact.
The president-elect has vowed to repeal it.
Well, I think there's some things that need to be fixed. When you pass a piece of legislation and you write the bill, and we wrote it as tight as we possibly could, and then they start basically putting the rules to it. If the White House says, I want this type of interpretation, that makes it very, very liberal interpretation. It's not what the bill was supposed to do. I said, you people are going down the primrose path, which is horrible. We didn't write the bill that way. In spite of themselves trying to liberalize and putting EVs out and all of the critical minerals, we're still depending on China when we're supposed to be weaning ourselves off of China. He can fix that immediately. President Trump can come in here and change some of those rules to get back. And then change the bill. It'll be his energy bill. But
So reprogramming some of these funds, you'd be okay with.
Absolutely.
There are things in there, tax credits for nuclear, biofuels. Do you think you think parts of this will survive?
I think it almost has to. The investments are made, and most of the investments, the majority of the investments are made in what you would consider red states, Republican states. That's just because of what they do and how they operate, like West Virginia.
And you didn't hear much about that from the Democratic ticket.
They couldn't
during the
talk
campaign.
about it. He was tongue-tied.
Why?
I had no idea. I kept saying, can't you just tell what the bill did? They were saying, renewable, renewable, renewable. Only thing I said, you cannot eliminate your way to a cleaner environment, Margaret. You can't just say, I want to get rid of coal, I want to get rid of oil, I want no gas, I want nothing extracted. We're going to do everything with renewables. We'd be a third world country. You can't keep this economy running. Now, you can do it with innovation, technology. So I said, we're going to produce what we need. We do it cleaner and better than anywhere in the world. Producing more. So the bill did exactly on energy production. You wouldn't be number one in the world right now, 30 trillion cubic feet of gas, 4.7 billion barrels of oil. You wouldn't do that if we hadn't written that bill. He can take that and even go further with it. There are so many good things in that bill that he can change it, change the name, it'll be his. I'll help any way I can.
You sound, speaking about energy policy, like a Republican.
I hope I sound like an American. It makes sense, okay? My Democrat friends were so far off the rail. Okay, I love them all, but I say, guys, but a lot of them really understand it. They just can't speak it because the base is going so far. And that's, I couldn't take it anymore.
Alaska Senator Lisa Murkowski, she is a Republican, but she's also known for being pretty independent.
She's the best of the best, my dear friend.
She said the next 4 years are going to be hard. The Trump administration's approach is going to be everybody toe the line, everybody line up. We got you here, and if you want to survive, you better be good, or we will primary you.
Thank God for ranked choice voting. Without ranked choice voting, my dear friend Lisa wouldn't be here. Or open primaries. If the Democrat and Republican Party control the primaries, they can control you up here. So they're going to say, hey, Margaret, I'm sorry, you just didn't toe the line right. You didn't vote with us when we needed you, so I'm going to find somebody else that I can control.
Who else is going to stand up to the president-elect when they disagree and be willing to say so out loud? Are there other senators up here who will do it?
I would hope, my father used to tell me, if you can say no with a tear in your eye, you're okay. If you can do it with respect and just say, Mr. President, I'm so sorry. Where I come from, that doesn't make sense. I can't explain it back home. I never just say, oh, you're wrong. You can't start out a conversation that's going to end productive if I tell you how bad you are on the front end.
We'll be right back. The ambassador charged by the Biden administration with freeing Americans held overseas, Roger Carstens, traveled to Syria late last week to make the first known contact with that country's caretaker government following the ouster of dictator Bashar al-Assad 2 weeks ago. Carstens sought help finding American journalist Austin Tice, who disappeared 12 years ago. We spoke with Carstens on Friday about why it was important to be on the ground in Syria. You told reporters that you were amazed at the number of secret prisons that Bashar al-Assad had, more than 40 of them. Have those prisons been searched yet? And do you know if journalist Austin Tice was held in them?
So it's not going to shock me to find out that there are prisons that have yet to be discovered and searched. I would say if I'm stunned by anything, it's just the amount of prisons. I mean, you'd almost think that if you were running a country and you wanted to jail your enemies, you'd have one prison and it wouldn't be secret. But to have like 35 or 40 secret prisons, I find that just horrifying, disturbing, and yet in a way fascinating. But really the bottom line is that we have to help or rather work with our interim authorities, officials, to make sure that we do a good search so that I can one day look Deborah Tice in the eyes and tell them that our search has been exhaustive. Now, in a perfect world, we're going to find Austin Tice. I think I've gone on record numerous times saying that I believe that he's alive and he's waiting for me to find him. And the president not long ago said that he believes Austin's alive. Our job in the U.S. government is to keep pressing and pressing and pressing to find out Austin's location, his disposition, his status, and to bring him home.
You're referring to them as interim authorities. Ahmed al-Shara, the head of HTS, also known as Mohammed al-Jolani, was described by State Department officials as being very pragmatic in those meetings today. But his group and he himself are still technically designated as terrorists under U.S. law because of prior affiliation with al-Qaeda. Do you trust that they are being helpful to the U.S. now?
They were definitely helpful today. We conducted a joint search of a facility that we all thought would have a probable, have some sort of relation to Austin Tice. So I understand, of course, their past. What I can tell you is that right now they're being helpful in the search for Austin.
So you conducted a joint search with HTS of a prison today. Did you believe that that is where Austin was being held?
We came up with a priority list of about 6 sites. And of those 6 sites, we felt that this had the highest probability of having held Austin at one time. But really, I guess I would say the best way to describe it is we're just not sure. With the time that we had in the ground, seemed to be our best shot. So we gave it a good hard look. We're going to review all the information and evidence that we collected and hopefully render some more decisions about the probability. But really, our job is to just keep searching.
The Assad intelligence ministries were known for keeping scrupulously detailed records, numbering prisoners alive and dead. Do those records still exist?
So we've had a chance to find various documents, or I would even say file folders holding information. Again, in the joint search that we conducted with the interim authorities today, we came across numerous documents. That's going to have to be brought back. It's going to have to be translated from Arabic into English. And sometimes these documents will actually have evidence on them. They may have fingerprints. They may have traces of DNA.
And this was a search you conducted along with special operators from JSOC?
I would never go into talking about who I was with, but I will tell you this. I was with members of the FBI. The Hostage Recovery Fusion Cell holds primacy on these cases. People that are experts at looking at crime scenes, and they did a wonderful job of sweeping it.
I know back in 2020, you went there at the direction of then President Donald Trump along with Kash Patel. The regime at that time never admitted to the United States that they held Austin Tice. Do you believe they were lying back then and that the regime did have him?
The regime, when we talked to them in 2020, they issued maximalist demands. They asked for the world. They weren't really giving anything. They never admitted to having Austin Tice. They never promised to give us any proof of life, POL as we call it. I would say that at some point we came across information, and that's as highlighted by President Biden and Secretary of State Tony Blinken, that led us to believe that at one point the Syrian government truly did have Austin Tice. Did they have him until the very end? That's information we're still trying to sort through. But at one point, we feel very confident that the regime did detain and have Austin Tice in their custody.
We will be right back. That's it for us today. We want to wish you all a very happy holiday season. This year, I wish you Merry Christmas, Happy Hanukkah, and Kwanzaa, because they are all celebrated this week. And since my colleague Major Garrett will be here next Sunday while I spend some time with my family, I'll add Happy New Year. Thank you all for watching Face the Nation. I'm Margaret Brennan.